Good morning, and welcome to the 2019 Business Summit and State of the City Address. I am Kelsey Torres, Interim President and CEO of the Chico Chamber of Commerce, and I will be your MC this morning. I would like to start by thanking all of you for joining us for this important annual event today. I would like to thank the City of Chico for co-hosting this event every year, CARD for generously sponsoring this room for us, our legacy partners of the Chamber who are instrumental in moving Chico forward, Levity Employer Solutions, Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, Golden Valley Bank, California Water Service, and the Orange Theory Fitness. Our visionary partners listed on the slide for investing in Chico, and our mayor, council members, city staff, chamber board members, and distinguished guests, including Representative from Congressman Lamalfa, Assemblyman Gallagher, and Senator Nielsen's office. On today's agenda, we will hear a special report from the 2019 Chair of the Chamber Board of Directors, Michelle Niven, Human Resources Director of the Chico Area Recreation District, a downtown update from Melanie Bassett, Executive Director of the Downtown Chico Business Association, an economic snapshot report from Mark Francis, President and CEO of Golden Valley Bank, and the State of the City address presented by Mayor of the City of Chico, Randall Stone. We appreciate and respect the diversity of views we have in this room this morning. We would like to respectfully request that all speakers are allowed to make their presentations and ask that you please refrain from making any comments during their presentations. You can submit a question for our Q&A session immediately following Mayor Stone's presentation. Now please join me in welcoming Michelle Niven, Chair of the Chamber Board of Directors, to the podium.
It's good to be here today as the 2019 Board Chair, launching the second edition of our special report, authored by our Task Force on City Revenue and Expenditures on behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors. Several years ago, the Chamber made an intentional pivot to directly address issues facing businesses and the community. In that pivot, quality of life became central to our vision, with crime reduction at the top of our advocacy platform. Launching the community vision in 2015 shaped a set of goals in key areas, such as police and roads, all in an effort to make Chico the safest, most vibrant premier city in the North State. We focused on a thriving business community, healthy local government, safe community, premier arts and recreational facilities, all of which are components of a strong and vibrant community. In 2017, the Chamber Board unanimously voted to form the Task Force on City Revenues and Expenditures, which provided a multidimensional perspective on our community needs, the available city revenues to address these needs, and an analysis of expenditures. The task force, comprised of community members from various backgrounds, focused on a two-pronged approach, analyzing both data and business anecdotes gathered over the years through business walks and anchor business listening sessions. The City of Chico was also a great partner and resource in these efforts. We now have the second edition special report from the task force in front of us, which combines this research into a call for action and recommendations for police, roads, fire, pensions, and yes, housing. Our economy is reliant on the availability of sufficient permanent housing for our workforce. Post-Camp Fire, a new and complex challenge faces our community and our region. Employers are facing the inability to attract talent, along with the reality of losing valuable talent and skills to other communities and businesses that can provide adequate, long-term, and affordable housing. This situation puts our economy at risk. The Chamber Board conducted a survey in mid-December to our business community, measuring the immediate impacts of the Camp Fire on their workforce due to the lack of long-term housing in our community. This survey does capture non-scientific data gathered based on individual business leaders' assumptions, and this data is contained in this year's special report that you have. Our current situation has the potential to change for the worse if we don't quickly meet the needs of our workforce. Looking again at state crime statistics, Chico's numbers remain in the bottom 18% of cities on the California Crime Index. On November 8th, our community population increased by 10 to 20% as a result of the Camp Fire. Today, the Chico Police Department is policing a community of approximately 110,000 people with an active police force size for a population of 90,000. Chief O'Brien projects that to ensure the safety of our increased population and the benefits afforded by a proactive community policing model, an additional 10 to 20 police officers are needed at an estimated cost of $3 to $5 million annually. During 2018, our community benefited from innovative programs such as the Retail Watch program. These programs were the result of strong partnerships between the Chico Police Department, the Chico Chamber, and the Downtown Chico Business Association. The Chico PD made significant strides towards the goal of operating as a proactive department and away from a reactive one. However, these strides forward are now in jeopardy due to the increased workload placed on our existing police staff. Take a short drive around Chico, and it will come as no surprise that the state of our roads is less than stellar. The Public Works Director provided statistics on our road conditions that were measured by the Pavement Condition Index, known as the PCI. On a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being perfect roads, the goal is to have a score of 80. Chico has dropped from 57 to 55 in the last year and will continue dropping with many of our major roads at a PCI of 20 or below. To put all those numbers in perspective, the average PCI in the state of California is 66, placing Chico 11 points below the average. Since the events of November 8th, we have experienced a 25% increase in traffic volume on our streets. This abrupt and severe spike in usage means that our roads will deteriorate at an accelerated pace. Looking at this from a financial perspective, the total funding available for roads in the 2019-2020 fiscal year is approximately $2.65 million, according to the Public Works Engineering Department. This funding includes gas tax and SB1 revenue, along with funds available from the Waste Franchise Agreement. The reality is, however, this funding level will not accomplish basic maintenance, much less improve the PCI of vital collector and arterial roadways. Fire service is critical to our area, as evidenced by the recent Camp Fire. As the fires also pointed out, it does not recognize jurisdictional lines, with perhaps the largest threat to our area being the wildfires from grassland areas and our abundant forests. We will continue to watch with interest the Butte County's previously discussed exploration of a countywide fire protection district and where resources can be allocated and deployed as necessary. As reported in the previous special report, the city of Chico continues to face a pension crisis, not unlike most cities in the state of California. The financial impacts of this situation will reach crisis proportions during the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Unfunded liability for CalPERS remains at $128 million, which is only slightly lower than last reported. The city should continue its work of ongoing communications with CalPERS while analyzing the options of buying out of CalPERS and replacing it with a qualified contribution retirement plan for employees. Additionally, the city should take advantage of every opportunity to contract work to non-public employee organizations to minimize the growth of the future liability. With this special report as background and context, the task force made the following observations and recommendations to the Chamber Board. Housing is an urgent need of our community. We need solutions for opening up more long-term housing availability for the demand that we are experiencing with the increased population. The road systems are in dire need of repair, and thoughtful consideration should be given to a dramatic funding increase to meet that PCI goal of 80. There is a need for approximately $3 million per year to adequately fund the police department, and the pension liability needs to be addressed solely by the city. The public should not be asked to assume this cost. The task force recommended that the city look at a revenue measure, but not before first talking to chamber members to explain the problem and what it would take to move it forward. We bring this information forward to continue the important community conversations about funding our community goals and increasing our quality of life, not only for existing businesses, but for generations to come. As reported by the Campfire Workforce Impact Survey, local businesses face significant economic consequences if these outlined challenges are not addressed quickly. To maintain a stable workforce, we must address the significant lack of available housing. The Chamber encourages community members to work together to first and foremost find solutions for long-term housing as quickly as possible. To keep pressure on the crime issue, the Chamber will continue to host meetings with businesses and retailers, especially on shoplifting, to talk about policing expectations and what businesses can do to be more police-oriented. Additional details are outlined in the special report that's been distributed this morning, and it's also available online at chicochamber.com. And we look forward to answering any questions during the Q&A at the end of Mayor Stone's State of the City address. Thank you, and back to you, Kelsey.
Thank you, Michelle. The release of the special report is not the end of the conversation, but the beginning. The Chamber will continue to convene critical meetings with businesses this year, encouraging healthy debate about the questions that lie before us as a community. Please join me in welcoming Melanie Bassett, Executive Director of the Downtown Chico Business Association, to the podium to give her Downtown Chico update.
Good morning. It's great to see so many people here interested and caring about our community. So for more than 44 years, the Downtown Chico Business Association has been working to preserve and enhance the value and vitality of downtown Chico by profile building and placemaking, so cultivating culture and bringing thousands of people to downtown Chico every year. Business and membership advocacy, so engaging local business and partnering with civic and community organizations. And activating and engaging the community, so fostering a safe, clean, and a fun place to dine, shop, and come play. So most of you have in front of you our annual report from 2018, and it reports our DCBA priorities for the year, some of our achievements, and details some of the most important community collaborations that we're very proud of that took place last year. But the big story continues to be the Property Owners Improvement District, the PBID. So as part of DCBA's efforts to improve and maintain the vitality of downtown Chico and to promote economic prosperity, the PBID services started 2 months early, so in November of 2017. And it truly has been a game changer for our #1 business priority, right? A safer community. So these are a few of the overarching goals of the PBID: to improve the downtown experience for customers, employees, visitors, through improved safety and appearance, enhance overall economic activity in downtown, increase occupancies by identifying gaps in the types of businesses located downtown, and to attract businesses and private investment, including residential development, which is somewhat new downtown, and we're excited about it. So this is the PBID flyer. We have plenty at the DCBA. If you want some for your business to be able to pass out, please let us know. It details the work of the Downtown Ambassador Program, and it actually represents an average of 260 hours weekly of services to make our downtown friendlier, safer, and cleaner. The flip side of the flyer shows the district boundaries, the hours, and also provides contact information as well as the hotline number. So this is the cleaning report. I'm so happy to report that the entire benefit district, A and B, have been pressure washed. Yay! We're very excited about that. And so now we're on a regular schedule to maintain that work, and they'll be cleaning the downtown core and getting it prepared for the event season, which actually launches in April. And the safety report, so safety remains our top priority at all times for our ambassador team. The ambassadors maintain a highly visible presence downtown, making business contacts, providing public safety escorts, when needed, working very closely with the Sergeant Cesar Sandoval and the Target team in a real collaborative approach, I would say, and it's going very well, to work on public safety and quality of life offenses downtown. The hospitality report, I think hospitality has been the biggest surprise for people. You know, on average, ambassadors provide assistance more than 15 times a day, and services include giving directions, welcoming people downtown, giving them information about restaurants, hotels, courtesy escorts for people that need to get to their car safely, outreach services and referrals, as well as support to downtown merchants. So downtown Chico is home to a thriving business district, I might say. Restaurants and retail provide for an exciting shopping and dining experience. New businesses continue to make downtown Chico their home. Property owners are reinvesting in our downtown by upgrading properties with new facades or with new retail office and, like I said, now residential on second floors. Our downtown district currently has 422 businesses, which covers 48 square blocks and continues to experience progress and growth. And this chart just shows the breakdown, in the types of businesses. Our annual meeting was scheduled, believe it or not, for the evening of November 8th, the day of the campfire. So it was postponed to January, and not long ago we met and recognized some great community members with Kudos Awards. First, Will Brady, B Street, Banshee, and Bill's Town Lounge that just opened was recognized for economic development and capital investment in downtown Chico. Lori Powers from Upper Crust Bakery, who just retired, for her positive impact on downtown, years of outstanding service and tradition and exemplifying the heart and soul of our community. And Audrey Taylor from Chapman Concepts for being an active participant in the DCBA and a consistent partner and supporter of everything downtown Chico. Sean Hamilton and Jen Silver from Chico Coffee Company for joining our downtown's community with enthusiasm and support in making facade and interior improvements. So impacts from the campfire were felt in the downtown business community, I'm not going to lie. There were a couple of very slow months. With that being said, 21 downtown businesses joined together to donate a percentage of their sales from Christmas preview, and 30 downtown businesses sold #ButteStrong wristbands, where 100% of the proceeds went to the North Valley Community Foundation Campfire Relief Fund. So with the help of the downtown businesses, the DCBA was able to raise $15,000, and here we are presenting that check to Giovanni Trisseri from North Valley Community Foundation, and also acknowledging local businessman Greg Schneeweiss, who donated 2,500 ButteStrong wristbands for us to sell and to donate. Downtown Chico is home to a number of exciting signature events that all of you are very aware of because many of them have been going on for many years. These events bring thousands of visitors to our city and our downtown on an annual basis, and we partnered with Explore Butte County to bring a successful Perfect Pairings Restaurant Week to Butte County in January. And last year we completed a redesign of our logos and our marketing assets for our signature events. With regards to marketing and communication, our downtownchico.com website is the centerpiece of our online communication and marketing efforts, which results in an impressive audience and reach. So 75,000 plus annual event attendees, 42,000 plus social media community, 133,000 plus unique visitors annually to downtownchico.com, 10,000 plus database with excellent open and click-through rates, and it's about 50-50 Chico local and regional visitors as we track for events, and partnerships with all local print and broadcast media. Our website and social media resources provide us with the opportunity really to actively engage with the community and our stakeholders, which allows us better to shape the direction of our organization and serve our community. What's next in 2019? Well, to continue delivering on the PBID street level services, creating a face and brand for downtown Chico, friendlier, safer, cleaner. Continue to partner with the city, the Chico Police Department, the Chamber, Clean and Safe Action Group, and City Council to fully implement the 5-year police staffing plan. As I repeatedly say, public safety remains our #1 priority. And increase the profile of downtown Chico as the premier regional destination to attract a quality customer, tenant, and resident base. to organize, sustain, and support signature placemaking events, activities, art, and music to the downtown district, and to create a Downtown Chico gift card program this year. With the PBID, we really have turned a corner. You know, for the last 4+ years, our attention at the DCBA has been on clean and safe issues. And now we are actually able to move our focus and really focus in on economic development and start to formulate a long-range plan for downtown. So our board and staff are studying the 2030 downtown element of the general plan and the downtown walkable plan. And these are the 3 elements that sort of have raised to the top for us. A walkable downtown, which the elements include making the streetscape more attractive, calming traffic, way signage, getting efficient parking management in place. Mixed use, you know, people residing in the downtown core, which has major implications for our parking policies. And placemaking, celebrating what is unique about Chico both in the present and historically. As an example of placemaking, how important it is, I shared this planning project with you last year, but it's actually under construction at 4th and Broadway. It's the Moorhead building renovation, and the plan is to renovate the existing building and incorporate similar details found in the original building constructed in 1904. It includes a unified awning with integrated signage, a sidewalk dining area, and interior renovations, including 16 additional rooms to the Diamond Hotel. It will definitely be a signature building on our downtown city plaza, which we're all very excited about and looking forward to. So this is just lastly a photo of our recent 2019-20 board elections. There are actually 6 additional members not shown here, but our board and staff are very proud of what we accomplished in 2018, given all the challenges that all of us have been facing. But we know we have to keep thinking and acting strategically to move downtown Chico forward. And as we move forward, we will continue to deliver on our marketing and advocacy promise to our membership. We'll seek opportunities, with the help to help our members be successful and ensure that downtown continues to serve as the core of our community, the crown jewel, the heart and soul of Chico, a place rich with amenities, nightlife, and culture. Thank you.
Next, please join me in welcoming Mark Francis, President and CEO of Golden Valley Bank, to the podium.
Thank you. You know, all the hard work behind the snapshot is really done by Kaylin Chapman of Harris Commercial Real Estate. I think Kaylin's here, right? Kaylin here somewhere? I guess I don't see him. And of course, then Natasha Biener, who's our marketing manager at the bank. We especially appreciate all the help we get from the city of Chico and from Debbie Zimke at REMAX. We couldn't do it without them. So the Chico Economic Snapshot measures quarterly where we've been using 5 seasonally adjusted and equally weighted categories: sales tax, dollar value of building permits issued, average housing prices, transient occupancy tax, TOT, and employment. Overall, we think it's a good look at how the community is doing economically, especially when compared year to year or quarter to quarter. We have discovered, after the spillway incident and the campfire, that you can't seasonally adjust out a natural disaster. It's just impossible, especially one the magnitude of the campfire. Seasonally adjusting requires seasonally consistent data, and we certainly didn't have that in the 4th quarter. Our index, when compared to previous quarters, is up, but the components have been affected by the fire. So is this quarter really the story, really telling the story? Is it a reflection of normal economic activity or natural disaster activity? Let's take a look at the components and you can decide. This is a line chart of all the components using 2007 as the base year. The gray line on the bottom is building permits. They really never have recovered back to pre-recession levels. Gold is employment at the highest level ever in Butte County. Green is housing prices, kicking up in the 4th quarter, as we all know. Black is our index line. Blue is a sales tax, down just slightly, and orange is TOT, skyrocketing. You might have thought that sales tax would be up in the 4th quarter, but it wasn't. A couple of times after the fire, you might have been like me, where you go into Target or some other retailer and you see how low the inventory levels are. Or you might think about the thousands and thousands of cars up in Paradise that need to be replaced. But talking to several retailers, they theorize that those of us who were not affected by the fire were basically in retail shock. and we stopped shopping, especially for big ticket items. That offset the sales from campfire victims and was probably the reason for the sales tax decline. It's very likely, though, that there'll be a bounce back in the first quarter. Building permits. See that spike about 2 years ago? That is rushing to get permits pulled before building code changes. And then the one just a quarter ago, that is due to the city raising building fees. In the week prior to the fee increase, the city processed what they say is a year's worth of building permits in that single week. So the value of building permits issued in the fourth quarter were down, and that shouldn't be unexpected. But it was the second highest fourth quarter in the last 5 years. Construction activity is going to continue to be strong in 2019. Housing. Prices have been on a pretty steep increase since the depth of the recession in 2011 and 2012. I'm sure you all already know housing prices were up in the fourth quarter, and it was 5.1%. But really, only about half the fourth quarter was after November 8th. And most of the closings in November were from contracts that were cut prior to the fire. So here's a better chart to explain just what's happening in the local housing market. The average closing price is up 21% in the 3 months since October. Average is basically a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,750 square foot home on a 15,000 square foot lot. In October, closing prices were 1% below listing prices. So that means that $357,000 house up there probably listed for about $361,000. By January, the closing price was 4% above the listing price, meaning the $432,000 house probably listed for about $415,000. Really not sure where this is going to go. However, I hear that willing buyers, those folks who are willing to pay $432,000 are starting to get close to equaling the number of sellers. Now, that doesn't mean our housing crisis is finished. It just means that there are a lot of folks who aren't really willing to pay those higher prices. Transient occupancy tax, the hotel bed tax, a component that would normally be affected or reflect out-of-area folks staying at our hotels. Tourism, right? Yeah, not anymore. TOT spiked, as I'm sure you all already know. After the fire, not a vacancy could be found. But that spike is not the story. After 30 days of occupancy, a hotel guest is no longer transient, and the tax is not charged. So campfire victims and workers are still in our hotels, and TOT revenue for the city is likely to plummet. Employment in the county just marches on, taking its biggest jump in the last couple of years. The seasonally adjusted number of almost 101,000 is, like I said, as high as it has ever been. Fourth quarter numbers probably don't reflect the loss of jobs in Paradise. We'll see that next quarter. But jobs drive our local economy, and it's still a huge question on whether we can find a way to keep our employees who lived in the Paradise area in the Chico area. Virtually all of us have at-risk employees. Will we be able to provide them with replacement housing in a reasonable time to retain all the folks that we need to retain? If we can't, it will certainly hurt our economy. So here's what I think. The snapshot is reflecting a natural disaster, not our normal economy. And it's extremely difficult to predict what's next. But that's exactly what we try to do in the Business Confidence Survey, which, if you haven't already noticed, is on the flip side of the snapshot. We did the survey in December after the campfire. It's a 5-question, multiple-choice survey of how business owners and managers feel about the prospects of their own companies in the year ahead and how they feel the local and national economies will do over the next 12 months. A score over 50 indicates an overall optimism about the local economy, and one under 50 means just the opposite. I'll be the first to tell you it's not scientific, but it's a good indication of what local businesses think. Surprisingly, the responses from our December survey didn't vary that much from our June survey. A 61.8 score is very optimistic, and it's down just a little from 64.8 that we saw in June. There was very little change in our respondents' sales expectations, and the 67% expecting an increase in sales is very optimistic, especially when you consider the 9% who think there'll be a decrease. Those who expect their profits to increase declined from 65% in June to 58% in December. And those who expect a decrease grew 8 percentage points. Employment expectations have been pretty consistent. 44% are going to increase staff and just 5% see a decrease ahead. That's good news for our local economy. The most significant change in the survey is more than twice as many think local business conditions will be worse over the next 12 months than we saw in the June survey. However, a majority of respondents still think the economy will be better. A little different with U.S. business conditions, where more than half think that it'll be the same or worse. Now, if you'd like to participate in the survey and you don't already, please contact me. If you want to get additional information or receive notifications, just go to the Golden Valley Bank website and you can sign up there. So it's really hard to tell what's going to happen with our local economy in the months ahead. But I can tell you this, and as you've already heard from others, it's all about housing. Replacement housing, not FEMA trailers, not second dwelling units or accessory dwelling units, replacement housing. And not hundreds of them, but thousands of replacement houses. We have to have an entirely different mindset, And we need to lean on our local leaders to get it done. Thank you.
Now please join me in welcoming Mayor of the City of Chico, Randall Stone, to deliver his State of the City address.
Okay, again, my name is Randall Stone. I'm the mayor of the city of Chico. I was elected the mayor on December 4th of 2018, so I've been at this job for 10 weeks now. My friends, thank you all for joining us today, and I'd like to thank Kelsey Torres and everyone at the Chico Chamber of Commerce for inviting me here today and for hosting this important event every year, along with the city of Chico. I want to thank Vice Mayor Brown and to all of my council colleagues who are here today for their dedication to our community. I know I speak for the whole council when I say that each of us works very hard for the betterment of our community, and I genuinely thank each of my colleagues for the countless hours that they dedicate each day to this great city. The speed and efficacy of our resilience is directly related to our ability to work collectively together towards our collective goals, and I'm excited about the work that we have before us. 100 days ago, our community was devastated by an unimaginable tragedy, a tragedy that continues to threaten the very existence of our neighbors to the east and indelibly alters the future plans of our shared regional community. Immediately, we saw our residents rise to the challenge to address the needs of our friends and neighbors. And many of you know that I've been an amateur radio operator and emergency service volunteer for 2 decades. I was listening to the public safety dispatchers. I will lose it a few times during this speech, so I apologize. I was listening to the public safety dispatchers as several of our fire units on the ridge were overcome by flames and rode out the devastation, sheltering in place in North Paradise. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, what is happening through the rest of the city like so many of you? I'm hearing this in real time, and I could not be more proud of this entire community and this staff. Let me just preface that right off the bat. These past 3 months have illustrated the most thoughtful, compassionate, and genuine human kindness I've ever seen in my life. We should be tremendously proud of our entire community's response to the campfire. When I was first elected to the Chico City Council in 2012, I made a point of walking and talking, engaging directly with service providers, police and fire, ambulance, wastewater treatment plant, and the waste haulers themselves. I was literally embedded and rolling along with these trucks as they went with the ambulance service over Halloween. And I wanted to understand and literally observe the hard work of our city and community staff. Obviously, I can just as easily read the glossy page staff reports and budget analyses. But in my career as a financial planner, you've got to show up. You've got to get into the mix. You've got to be walking and talking. 3 years ago, I signed on as chair of the Greater Chico Homeless Task Force after they were ignored for the better part of the year by the previous administration. It should surprise no one that when the task force languished without council leadership in 2015, Chico's point-in-time survey saw a 92% increase in homelessness. The second checkup on homelessness was scheduled for last month, and most assuredly those numbers will show a several-fold increase again. You've got to show up. You've got to be walking and talking. During my time as the chair of the Greater Chico Homeless Task Force, coordinated informational sessions, including sponsoring a visit from Utah housing expert Lloyd Pendleton, engaging in public debates on housing policy issues, working with university researchers, and regularly reuniting service providers for a more cohesive and regional response to housing and homelessness. We engage the public in discourse surrounding tiny house villages, navigation centers, warming shelters, crime syndicates, and safety. We invited experts. We dreamed of coordinated expansion of services with our regional service providers and Butte County. At that same time, I flew to San Diego and met with their housing czar about San Diego County's Project 25, which provides housing and medical care delivered in concert that reduces costs and improves health outcomes for people who are vulnerable and over-rely on crises services. Project 25 looked at those 25 most expensive homelessness cases that were costing San Diego County $4.3 million per year. And by the end of the program, costs were nearly halved. In the first year alone, Project 25 participants took 600 fewer ambulance rides, were in the ER 1,100 fewer times, and spent nearly 1,000 fewer days in the hospital compared with the year before they entered the program. All this resulted in a savings of more than $2 million. $2 million on 25 people. None of the original Project 25 participants have returned to the streets as of August of this last year. That same year, I joined the Housing, Community, and Economic Development Committee of the League of California Cities. It was clear to every member of that committee that addressing housing and homelessness was paramount. In fact, it's been one of our top 5 goals with the League of California Cities for the last 4 or 5 years. I've been a board member for the last 2. And why am I telling you all this about this committee and its work over the last 3-4 years? This is the committee that sponsored and pushed through California Senate Bill 2, the Building Jobs and Homes Act, providing an ongoing source of revenue to cities throughout California, including Chico. The $4 billion state bond to fund multifamily housing, affordable housing, that will be coming to the city of Chico in 2020, came from this group. Money will be made available for local housing and will be based on leveraging other funding and staffing resources. For example, this year alone, we have $250,000 just for the purpose of preparing amendments to the city's planning documents, the general plan, the municipal code updates, et cetera. And also processes that eliminate housing development constraints and streamline approvals. We anticipate an annual appropriation of approximately $352,000 to be used strictly for the development of affordable housing. That's in Chico alone. Chico showed up and is walking and talking. And now it is Chico's chance, the state of California has showed up and is walking and talking, and now it's Chico's chance to do the exact same. The choices we must make are tough, and the city balances ever-growing cost with providing services while in the middle of a federal disaster zone. Some upcoming housing developments in the queue are at Chico Veterans Village at Bruce Road and 20th Street. That's a 52-unit affordable housing complex for veterans. 3 Habitat for Humanity homes in the Mulberry neighborhood are expected in mid-2020. An additional 4 Habitat for Humanity homes in the Chapman neighborhood expected in 2022. And a 100-unit affordable senior and special needs multifamily housing project at Notre Dame and Humboldt on city-owned land across from March Junior High expected in 2023. And I've learned some things along the way after all of this effort and all of this coordination of groups. I'd like to share that with you. One, matter is neither created nor destroyed. Obviously, I'm being flippant when I'm talking about human beings and referring to them as matter. If you want to address vagrancy issues, you can't wish it away. You can't cite your way out of vagrancy problems. You need housing, and as our friends in San Diego learned over the last decade, we need it right here in something similar to a Project 25. But what did we do? Instead, over the last 4 years, the city brought forward twice a sit-lie ordinance that drove our vagrancy problems deeper into our neighborhoods as evidenced by other communities' reported experience, as well as multiple reports of increased vagrancy problems shifting northward to our residential neighborhoods. It is important to note that during the same time, Chico produced no additional housing services and produced virtually no additional affordable housing units. But the 92% increase jumped while no additional services were being produced. And yet roughly 70% of residents who are homeless have lived in Chico for 5 years or more and were not homeless prior to their arrival. Let me say that again. Approximately 70% of the people that are homeless today in Chico have lived in Chico for 5 years or more and were not homeless when they first got here. And we can see in their point-in-time surveys, county after county after county, these are consistently the numbers. And yet we hear discussion as though the solution should be, we need to get these people out of town. These are our residents. These are our homeless. Simply walking and talking should have cured that problem. There's no need to try and reinvent blocks for wheels. We know that in California, redevelopment agency disillusion lost $1 billion per year for housing. In Chico, that amounted to roughly $6 million a year in affordable housing, plus the matching set aside. About $12 million we used to spend a year on affordable housing, and that disappeared overnight in February of 2012. Gone forever. Without a similar financing commitment, there won't be any low or very low income housing. Now, historically, Chico builders have kept single-family home production artificially low, despite the claims of, quote, environmental, agricultural, and infrastructure constraints. As of last month, currently entitled projects within the city of Chico include 2,500 single-family homes and nearly 2,800 multifamily residential units in the near-term pipeline. Now, let me say that again. The city of Chico currently has permitted and waiting for the developer, fully entitled, and we just have a building permit for them to pull in most of those cases. A total of 2,500 single-family homes and 2,800 multifamily units. The city's remaining role in the production of the majority of these projects involves only ministerial approvals, such as building permits. That's over 5,000 households with homes that are just waiting to be built in the city of Chico alone. But that's true across California as well. As of right now, there are over 450,000 fully entitled housing projects that are waiting in the wings for something other than environmental, agricultural, and infrastructure constraints. If we had only been walking and talking over the last 5 years and could identify legislative tools to enhance this housing delivery, we'd be in much better shape. One that seems to show up time and time again is inclusionary zoning. We are one of the only cities in California of our size that does not have inclusionary zoning. In Chico, the building community managed to keep the KB Homes and Lennars out of town, while a small number of local builders land banked large plots of property. That process has recently produced little to no locally sourced production of affordable housing. After decades of experience, it is clear that without a mandate, the market will fail to produce workforce housing. And if we don't house our lowest income residents, their employers will leave and we exacerbate our economic challenges, just as you heard from Mr. Francis. Therefore, I am proposing that our city council legislate and pass a 10% minimum inclusionary zoning ordinance. This would require developers of large multifamily housing developments to set aside at least 10% of the units for low-income housing residents. Simply put, this is part of taking responsibility for Chico's future and mandating that housing for low-income residents is set aside. It is the intention of the city of Chico to work with the local development community on gap financing and subsidizing these expenses. The bottom line is, the city of Chico intends to act. Last month, this council began the process of finally coordinating with the county on Code Blue emergency shelter options. 2 weeks ago, there was a dangerous cold snap that caused a disruption in the city and county's emergency response to weather incidents. Ambiguous statements about severity and coordination produced no discernible action on the part of community leaders. This city intends to act. And we did. On February 6th, the city took the unprecedented action of providing a warming shelter for the precariously housed, with every known housing option absorbed, every homeless center option completely full, and without a larger coordination within the county. The city took action and provided a warming shelter for all residents for the duration of the extreme cold weather. Thank you. Next week, we will again take up coordinating with city and county officials and continue walking and talking on emergency shelter options. It is also my pleasure to announce that our police department is fully staffed with every officer position staffed and based on population numbers before the Camp Fire. So that's to say it's sort of a lie. About a week before the fire hit, we had reached that fully staffed level, and of course our population numbers are something in the order of 10 to 20,000 more. If we take national numbers, we've got about one officer for every 15,000 people. We've got one or two additional officers that we may need to hire. Obviously, the needs for policing have changed since the Camp Fire, but Chico still saw a marked increase in crime and violent crime over the last 4 years, despite that staff up. Without aggressive measures and outside-the-box thinking, the increasing crime trend will continue. And I want to make sure that I make note that I am not faulting our staff or our police chief for these increases in problems. I've got nothing but admiration and respect for our department as well as the chief. We are just dealing with a resource problem and a direction of those resources. Without aggressive measures and outside-the-box thinking, the increasing crime trend will continue. Funding for an additional officer for the next 3 years to match that population increase has been received, and more financial support is expected to come in the future for those additional officers. 4 years ago, I sought funding from the Chico Unified School District for school resource officers. And last year, that funding from the district finally came through, providing fully staffed officers in Chico schools. And I have to commend Dr. Kathy Kaiser and the Chico Unified School District for their efforts on that behalf. We have police officers that are getting intel for our gang populations within our high school and the schools, and not just high school, and the schools themselves. And that's providing intel for our officers on the street. The City of Chico's request for the state of California regarding the Camp Fire includes, and I apologize, I differ with Mr. Francis on some of the impacts here. What we have asked the state for is $6 million per year for the next 3 years to 5 years in direct backfilling of our general fund expenditures from the Camp Fire. That's impacts on police, fire, public works, administration, the whole lot. We've also requested a backfill of the transient occupancy tax that Mr. Francis referred to the tune of about $1 million is what we're expecting that impact. And finally, $12 million in traffic management systems that will allow us to more effectively manage traffic congestion. Now, that's not an inch of pavement whatsoever. As you know, driving in Chico post-Camp Fire feels like everyone is constantly looking for an address. Chico's traffic systems are presently the traffic equivalent of a clogged toilet, and we know it. SB1s are assisting our road rehabilitation efforts, including Cohasset street paving and esplanade repairs, and all of this funding will help the police and public works departments be more efficient and effective while reducing costs through operational changes. In 2014, I proposed that the Downtown Chico Business Association form a Property and Business Improvement District, a PBID, that last year established a paid downtown ambassadors program. And while I commend you on your efforts, I also have to say I think the results speak for themselves, but the budget story needs to be told as well. Instead of spending $160,000 per year, that's the average cost per year for a police officer in the city of Chico, total cost. We could spend a fraction of that cost on multiple ambassadors that don't cost $160,000 a year, social workers, case managers to address quality of life issues with better outcomes. And that seems to be exactly what the PBID did. Instead of sending a police officer to push that person that's sleeping in front of your alcove, we can get the downtown ambassadors to address it at a far, far cheaper price. It's a different spin on the broken window theory. You don't clean a window with a hammer. In recent years, the decision was made to analyze our fire department's service delivery model. The results showed that our fire department is operating considerably inefficiently. Between suboptimal station placement and the insistence to run unreimbursed medical calls, our fire department responds to tens of thousands of calls per year, but typically only about 100 structure fires. The overwhelming majority of these calls for service are medical calls, which the hospital and not the city receive reimbursement for the response. You get it? The police and fire and ambulance are called. They respond to the scene, whoever gets there first, and the ambulance is receiving the insurance revenue, the medical payments for that response. Our firefighters are not. In fact, when our fire engines leave the station to attend to a medical call, all 3 firefighters at an average pay of approximately $160,000 as well per firefighter leave the station to the call, while another call to our county counterparts requests the county engine drive into our Chico fire station responding to the medical call. So the city of Chico pays for the 3 firefighters to attend to the medical call, while also reimbursing the 2 county firefighters that drive into the Chico station. The hospital ambulance arrives seconds later, but receives the full reimbursement for the call. Moreover, our units are now responding out of a different location because they're now in another location away from their station, further exacerbating our response times. Walking and talking with other departments can help here. The authors of our Standards of Coverage report explicitly noted that this change in medical response can be the single greatest determinant of successful fire response in our community. I'm working with staff and the fire department to find long-term solutions with the complete suggestions of the Standards of Coverage report and not cherry-picked details that support particular funding beneficiaries. Looking at our sources of general fund revenues, we have sales taxes and property taxes. Our property taxes continue to grow at a steady rate pre-Camp Fire. But growth in sales tax revenue has been increasing at a decreasing rate, largely due to a declining tax base. So expecting the largest revenue source, our $22 million, I think is what we We tax goods in the state of California, not services. And there are more and more goods that are not being manufactured in the United States and more services that are providing. So this tax base continues to decrease, even as our population is increasing and even as the sales tax revenue is increasing. It is a declining revenue source. This is true of every community in the state. And property taxes, we're asking for $6 million a year in backfill for 3 years. That's pretty substantial for our level of budget. The Chico Chamber of Commerce is exploring available options, but I personally remain opposed to sales tax measures for these and many other reasons. At the same time, expenses, including labor, materials, and supplies, continue to rise. Employee costs are rising around 7 to 8% per year. You all familiar with the Rule of 72? The Rule of 72 says you take the number 72, divide it by your compounding interest rate, and however many times that goes through is how quickly in cycles that the number is going to double, right? So if I've got employee costs going up 7 to 8% per year, and I try and divide 72 by 7 to 8, I get about 10, roughly 10 years, right? So our employee costs are going to double every 10 years. When I was first elected in 2012, our general fund budget was $42 million in that 2013 year. Now we're at 52. Workers' compensation costs in California are 3 times the national average. 3 times the national average. The city of Chico's unfunded pension liabilities is around $124 million and growing under the assumption that CalPERS is earning 7% per year. They didn't. A downturn in the economy could create more challenges for us as we strive to live within our means. Combined with all of what I've said, several recent performance audits have shown that although our staff is highly efficient, increasing workloads without adding capacity is unfeasible. So additional staff will be needed to maintain our service levels, especially as we're continuing to build out and our city grows. Our needs are in gap financing for new development, especially for affordable housing. That includes funding for inclusionary zoning requirements. Automobile temporary shelters, while we have people that are still dealing with the aftermath of the Camp Fire. Industrial building shelters in tent cities, land for housing, public bathrooms and showers, climate change policies, and fire fuel reductions in densely populated areas such as the Arundel Donax and Little Chico Creek. And finally, we need common sense cannabis ordinances that help us recoup costs to address Prop 64's deficiencies. This is legal, and the tax revenue is going elsewhere. I don't understand why we have to take the impacts for cannabis use in our community that's legal, and then we aren't collecting any of the revenue to deal with the problem. It's just the same as the fire department, right? We get the call, we go out, we respond first, and they collect the revenue for the action that we're taking. Something's got to give. Finally, I've tasked our Arts Commission with coming up with a youth arts program, a kind of hands-on approach to youth arts. I know my son has responded to the campfire with orange fire and blacky smoky skies, and I know the emotional health of our most vulnerable residents will be central to our healthy progress. The arts community has a tremendous opportunity here as well to help us heal while we navigate the logistics. To our Paradise residents, Concal residents, Magalia residents, welcome. What we talk about over the next years are not Paradise or Magalia or Concal issues. These are not impacts that we simply deal with. This is life. And the past 3 months have been unimaginably devastating. Economic development demonstrates the success of our neighbors is the success of our friends and our success as well. We agree that we cannot have people sleeping on the streets and in our public spaces. My council shares this goal. We just got to figure out how we get there. We agree that cannabis regulations forced on our community are not good, and that we need to find solutions within the mandates that have been placed on us by the state of California. Well, nobody asked for this disaster. We had 1,092 homeless people on election day, just 2 days before the fire. We most certainly have thousands, many more than that today. And the work we do today, unequivocally, will be our greatest work to date. And purchase services is very often contract services. So you're seeing the amount of money that we're spending, and if I had a comparison for you year to year, remember in 2012, this number was about 10 million less. And we're seeing that employee cost increase 7 to 8% per year. You think it's pensions. Pensions play a role in that, but mostly that 7 to 8% per year has to do with workers' compensation and the increase in cost to do business in the state of California, especially for public agencies. If you get an injury, the city buys the injury. Okay, and this is the expenditures by department. You can see still our highest priority by a long shot, public safety. Fire as well, 25%. And 6%, a measly 6% for our parks. They cost us, if memory serves me correctly, about $4 million a year, and they're bringing in $100,000, $105,000. So you can see our cost outlay. You can see what impacts us. And again, totally operating expenditures. We will come up with more, assuming our budget numbers are correct and we get a backfill from the state. Our budget is coming up lower than our revenue. When I was first elected, we came in with almost an $8 million general fund deficit. We're now in the black to the tune of $19 million. But, thank you, incredible challenges ahead. Yes, I'm excited. I think staff has done really an unbelievable job. We could not have got through any of this without staff support and encouragement. They've done really a great job, and my hat is off to all of you. But the bottom line is we have some very, very scary things ahead of us. We're going to need community resilience, as well as recognizing that we're not all coming here from the same place, right? Some people that were evacuated from Paradise that now live in Chico are traumatized. Those that don't have homes are traumatized. Those that have just lived in this community and are white-knuckling as they drive through traffic, they're traumatized. I ride an electric unicycle most days, and really we're going to begin to see some of staff's investment in our bicycle routes. What we've done over the last 10 years to invest in different modes to schools, different modes to work, that bicycle bridge that's going to come across East 20th Street will get people to Butte College, thousands of students to Butte College, much more readily and easily, and exposing that entire section of town to something other than white-knuckling through 20th Street and Highway 99. So with that, I will hand it back to the chamber, and we'll begin the Q&A section. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first question, since our sudden population growth comes from the fire-displaced residents of Paradise, can Chico PD borrow officers from Paradise PD while our community starts this recovery process?
The Paradise folks, I can't make a decision as to how they staff their police response and what their staffing levels are. There are people that don't have homes, so I'm not convinced that they have the capacity for that. Mm-hmm. But certainly we're willing to explore that. That's not something that we would restrict. I think Paradise would have a more difficult time with that proposal.
Thank you. I think this one would be for Melanie. It seems like there are more vacancies in the downtown area. Is that accurate? And if so, what is the vision for the future to attract new businesses?
Great question. There are fewer vacancies, actually. I didn't spend a lot of time this morning talking specifically about new business that's come to downtown, but there's quite a bit of development, and as I mentioned, residential as well. And we are working with the city for business attraction and with some of our commercial real estate folks. Looking at, I think most people are really amazed at how much retail we have, because you hear this around different cities that retail's drawing up, and it really isn't. We have like 27, 28 retail shops in downtown, and they're very unique to downtown. We have Upper Park Clothing that just opened up, Watchman that came over from North Valley Mall. We have, Insomnia Cookie Company that's just opening up next to the Chico Children's Museum that just opened. We'll be working on that block in particular to elevate some of the facades that need some work. Chico Coffee Company opened, and residential is being planned and up above that unit. So I would say vacancy is down, but there's still work to do in our downtown. And we're focusing on that now.
Thank you, Melanie. The next question, I think, is for our mayor. Can we expect a town hall forum where our Chico community can dialogue with our city council, city department heads, the chamber, and the DCBA?
On a specific issue, I'm guessing that's typically what a town hall would do. Otherwise, they're just called council meetings. That's what we do twice a month. And then we do with our internal affairs committee hearings. But I have frequently over a single topic gone to a particular neighborhood. I know in my Sunset neighborhood where I live, we had a town hall meeting regarding some crime upticks, and we were at one of the Chico Unified School District sites. I had a town hall meeting for annexation in the Chapman neighborhood. So in answer to the question, yeah, absolutely, we do it all the time.
Thank you. What are our prospects for returning commercial air service?
Nobody from the chamber want to take that one? We continue to try and bring in commercial air service, right down to late last night. I know it was Valentine's Day, but I was with a friend talking Airport Commission, who's very interested in the airport's commercial service. It's a tough battle. We see essential air service exist in Arcata, but we are not part of that service delivery. They're so remote that they're going to continue to have a carrier. So when we're comparing city to city, Chico is not something that gets like Crescent City in that area does, where they're required to have essential service. So it's an uphill battle, and we continue to push forward on it.
Thank you. This might be for Mark or Randall. How much wealth has been transferred to Chico from Paradise as a result of the fire? And how can that new wealth be used to help pay for road repair, housing, and other impact efforts?
Well, I can tell you, deposits are absolutely up in Chico, and it's primarily from insurance checks. So those are all things that are designated for someone's new home someplace. So those kinds of dollars that have flown into our economy are really focused on one thing. The sales tax part of it, we may see that go up in the first quarter and the second quarter and beyond as more of those people spend money here. One thing that I heard yesterday from the folks at Recology was that in December of this year, of last year, of 18, their tonnage that they picked up in Chico was 63% higher than a year ago, December of 17. So there is a lot more activity happening in Chico, and that's bound to produce some more taxes. But I don't know if it's enough to do all the things that we need to get done.
And I'd like to comment as well about that. I toured the Weed Fire and the Valley Fires in Lake County with my fire chief. And these were, as the fires were burning, we went behind the line. And in Lake County, I met with an elected official there and asked, what did you do right? What did you do wrong? Tell us, give us all the mistakes. I want to hear all the mistakes that you made in the first few hours, because God help us if this ever happens to us in our community. And again, this was a few years ago. And the elected official gave me the USA Today answer. We're going to be great, and things are going to be resilient, and we're coming back full force, and people are moving back. And when he realized that I wasn't coming with a news crew, he got real. And he broke down in front of me, a tough guy. And he said, how do you avoid becoming a community of fifth wheels? And in that moment, I knew exactly what the problem was. Couldn't have forecasted that before. The problem is you have people that get insurance checks that don't immediately start to rebuild. They have a fifth wheel that's on their property, and when they never rebuild their house, the community never gets that standing house again, the property tax base declines, and you are a community of fifth wheels. So there's a lot of deposits in this community, but we've got to find a way to make sure that people are going to build and spend the money back in this community rather than relocating. I'll also mention that the League of California Cities has reported, and they report for the entire state of California, the impact of sales tax in communities that suffer a disaster like this is flat. We don't see sales tax increasing for a variety of reasons. So anyway, back to you.
Thank you. What do you plan on doing about pensions that the city can't afford? And can the city and state lift regulations temporarily to facilitate housing construction?
I'm not sure I understand the second part of the question. The first part of the question relates to employee cost and pension costs. Mm-hmm. Without question, we have to continue to ask more of our employees to pay those increasing pension costs. As pensions are increasing in cost, and if that share is not equally split amongst the employees, the burden continues to be shouldered by the city, and you see that exacerbation of costs. When I was first elected in 2012, our two public safety unions had 0% paid towards their pension by the employee and 2% by the employee in another group. Now those are up to 9 and 12, depending on the group. But when you're spending 40% on the pension cost, they have to meet us halfway, just as we're seeing those increasing costs. I'm not sure about the second part of the question. Could you repeat it? Yes. See if I get it this time.
Can the city and state lift regulations temporarily to facilitate housing construction?
So I think that relates to lowering fees, which we've done. We have accessory dwelling units, which are mother-in-law units, and we have dropped those fees from $12,000 per unit to $6,000, then down to $3,000. That's where they are now within the city of Chico. This allows you to build a mother-in-law unit in the back of one of your units. That makes that much more cost effective. On top of that, if you're in a qualified opportunity zone or a qualified opportunity fund, you can get capital gains tax free on that property after 10 years. So the opportunities for a pro forma for somebody that's trying to find rental space within their house is really quite extraordinary. The fees are being reduced and potentially eliminated depending on whether we can get a backfill of public or private financing sources.
Thank you. This next question is in regards to economic development. If there is a 0% commercial vacancy rate, where will businesses grow? And who is looking at this and what efforts are being planned?
The commercial space. Again, we have a problem with real estate, a crisis in real estate. We have, 5,300 housing units that have still yet to be developed, and those are fully entitled by the developer, and so the land is there, but we don't have any other spaces for commercial development. So it's just going to have to develop as we continue the housing production surrounding our community. But no question, we went to zero vacancy just as we did with housing, and the problem is exactly the same. We have a real estate problem.
Yeah, and I think that our biggest issue is retaining the businesses that we have. Because there's going to be a lot of pressure on some of our larger businesses when they can't keep their at-risk employees. And that should really be number one in our mind right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Our median household income, 4 people, median household income is about $44,000 a year, and our median home price is about $325,000. Where are your $15 an hour employees going to be able to live? How can the employers continue to keep their employees in a city that can't afford to live in that housing? So those employers leave. That's how detrimental the job impact is. It's direct. It's significant. I agree with Mr. Francis wholeheartedly. That should be our central concern is keeping those employers here and those jobs here.
Would the city consider waiving or placing a moratorium on CEQA regulations?
It's clearly a question for me.
Yes, it is.
How that is loaded, and some of you won't get that. I'm an environmentalist, and I hate CEQA. I think it's a waste of time. I think it wastes developers' time. I think it spends 2 years encouraging lawsuits without any better environmental impacts. In fact, we know that. There was a study by the League of California Cities that indicated that CEQA was putting restrictions on development and only delaying the projects without any additional environmental benefit. It just cost more. Literally no additional outcome, but greater cost. I'm not a fan of CEQA, and I'm looking for a better solution, and I'm talking to everyone I can, high and low, including Congressman LaMalfa's office. And it's a state regulation. That's a California Environmental Quality Act, but still, we're putting some pressure on, and I'd like to see CEQA significantly revised.
I think it's interesting that somehow we can waive CEQA requirements for sports stadiums, but we can't do it in a natural disaster like this.
No kidding. Yeah. Without better outcomes, right? If we were getting better environmental policy or better projects, maybe we could say it would be worthwhile. But we spend 2 years, hundreds of thousands on lawyers with no different project. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. How will the recent strategy workshop and the information presented here today be incorporated into policies and programs in the next 2 years?
Everything that I've mentioned today has been something that I proposed or am proposing and is in draft, and staff has been already notified, if they weren't notified today, that was the direction that we're moving. But I am one of 7. There's no special authority that the mayor has at all. So my colleagues are going to have to come on board with a lot of these proposals as well. What's the likelihood of that happening? I think pretty darn good. I didn't lay out a chapter and verse of exactly the way I'd like to see these things done. I pointed out that we know these are the things that need to be done. So let's get to work. The city of Chico intends to act.
Thank you. How does the city plan to incentivize construction of the missing middle segment of housing in Chico, also referred to as workforce housing?
I'm surprised it was called the middle section of housing. That's your 3 2-bedrooms, your 1,700 square foot home, your $325,000 median household cost. We've subsidized development. Unfortunately, over the last, since the last time we changed our fee structure, we have a flat fee structure. So it costs you the exact same amount of money in development impact fees to build a 5-bedroom, 5-bath, 10-bedroom, 10-bath McMansion as it does a 1-bedroom, 1-bath ADU until we changed ADUs. So you can see we've subsidized the McMansions and overpriced all of the rest of our housing. So once we changed that, and I had wanted us to do that in our last fee change, we get a flurry of lawsuits, which is absolutely their entitled process. But we get hit with lawsuits, and we needed to move forward with our development impact fee changes, and we're going to go back and create a sliding fee structure. I'm convinced of it, that we will make the 1s and 2 bedrooms much, much more affordable from a fee standpoint, and those McMansions no longer subsidized by the City of Chico's development impact fee.
Thank you. I think this next question could possibly be up for grabs. What sort of businesses or industries would the City of Chico like to see come into our city?
Any of them, practically, right?
That's the simple answer, yes.
We're at such risk of losing some of our larger employers that we need to get virtually any businesses attracted to Chico.
And you could look in the faces of some of the employees, your friends, especially if that are on the lower income ladders that are working for some of these employers. You know what they're facing, and I have a strong sense that we're going to lose some of those lower income employers if we haven't already, if the plans aren't moving in that direction. So we need everybody because we've got a replacement problem as well.
We're also at risk of losing some of the large employers we have because they are unable to recruit executive management right now because of the housing issue. So while I recognize you refer to McMansions, I mean, there is a need for housing of that size for those folks who are going to run these companies. So I think that when we look at development fees, we have to be very careful that we're not disincenting any level of housing at this point. We can't afford to. Even though we have, you mentioned 5,300 housing units, 2,800 of which are multiple family, 2,500 single family homes, that's not going to solve our issue. So we can't rely on that exclusively. We've got to do some very creative things that will incent housing that's built by the private sector, because if we use state or federal money, it will trigger prevailing wage, which makes that cost of building even higher. So we really have to think about this holistically and don't have a lot of time to act.
True. We need housing of all types, but the city is no longer going to be subsidizing the McMansions. That's the problem. We don't suggest that somebody shouldn't build those, but the city taking out of its general fund in order to pay for the fees for that level of housing that we have is not something I'm supportive of. But I agree, disincentivizing housing is not something I'm excited about either. But remember, those 5,300 housing units that are ready to go are throughout the city already. Let me emphasize, that's not special planning areas. That's not the proposed FEMA or future development of Tuscan Ridge further up in our most environmentally sensitive and remote areas of our county. We're suggesting moving housing ahead of those 5,300 units in our most remote spaces. I think it's probably a good idea if we could encourage some developers to develop their land that's right here in town, right close to our infrastructure, and will help get us some of those infrastructure needs from our federal government and state governments.
I think we really need to define what ready to go actually means. And I'm looking at some of the building community out here and wondering if they feel like there are 5,300 housing units ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go.
I don't see any yeses. I see
Well, and
more
even if
shaking
they're
of
ready
the
to
way.
go, where's the workforce to build them?
You got it. Let me make sure we're clear on what I'm talking about. The city of Chico has no further entitlement process on those permit applications. So they're being held back for reasons that have nothing to do with regulatory requirements on the city. The message has been, we're too tight with our regulatory controls on housing. That simply isn't the case for 5,300 homes in the city of Chico. Now, maybe for whatever reason, they're not turnkey because the developer doesn't want to move forward with that. But that's the reality of our permits they have applied for, maybe because they thought building fees were going to go up in the last year and they pulled a bunch of building permits, and that's the reason why they're waiting. And maybe they didn't have any intention to build that. That's on top of special planning areas and more remote spaces. I don't want to negate that we don't have additional housing problems, but I want us to stop pretending like we're at zero when there's 5,300 units of housing readily available in our city of Chico. For whatever reason, they're being held back. We haven't placed a single FEMA trailer, those 80 acres and 250 housing units. None of those are in Chico. We have few landowners here. What's the disconnect, and how do we break through with that? That's what we're trying to accomplish, and hopefully we're going to be able to do that with our fee structure.
This next one, it says school public safety. Is the pedestrian and traffic situation around Chico High School and the Esplanade, is that on the city's radar? There's a great concern that it's not if, it's when a child or a pedestrian will be hurt in that area. I know I deal with it every day as well. So is that on the radar?
Sure,
Something to be
it's
looking
not
at.
if or when, it's when was the last injured student near Chico High School and the Esplanade. 2 years ago, Dr. Kaiser is telling me that it was 2 years ago that a child was injured on the Esplanade. I'm surprised that it has been even that long. The Esplanade is a dangerous space. We have sought Caltrans grants, and we're probably going to get that in 2020 to address a lot of these safety concerns, not the least of which is we have a federal ADA liability. If our disabled residents can't cross the Esplanade within the amount of time that the light cycles, they're at risk of being injured or killed, and that would be a direct liability on the city. So therefore, our risk management department, it's on their radar. It's on our radar for capital improvements. It's on our radar with our public works department to continue to maintain. It's on Chico Unified School District's radar. They were the ones that fought for that pedestrian crossing light at Lincoln, I believe that is. Well, at Lincoln and further up at West Sacramento. So not only is it on the radar, not only are we aware of its safety dangers, but I actually fought my last council to address these safety considerations. So we'll continue to move forward on it, but it's going to take some money.
Okay. We keep coming back to the topic of housing. This is how will the housing crisis affect college students living off campus, and what are some of the coping strategies to overcome those?
Somewhat a question for the university, but I don't want to pass the buck. We've been working with Dan Herbert and the Town and Gown Committee to see what options are available for university housing. They're talking about doubling up their residents. It used to be very common to do that, as I understand. I didn't, and I don't think anyone would want to live with me. Don't tell my wife that, she may leave me. The university is really more in direct control of their own housing units, and so I can't comment to that. I wish Mr. Herbert were here, but we are working on doubling up those housing solutions.
Thank you. The topic is PG&E bankruptcy filing. Efforts are taking place in Butte County to create a public option to PG&E. Does the bankruptcy filing help or hurt that effort?
Economically, I think the bankruptcy filing hurts the city of Chico and our residents and our community. That said, the city of Chico has already been moving to create a community, the CCA, I'm not remembering the acronym now, but it's a community choice aggregation. So we can pool and purchase our own power resources. You'd still end up using PG&E's transmission lines, but a number of cities are moving this in this direction, and it ends up being an enterprise fund for the city of Chico, which will help reduce those rates as well as help us meet our climate change goals.
Okay. How is the city addressing climate change, specifically as it relates to carbon emissions, which were exacerbated by the Camp Fire?
Carbon emissions from the Camp Fire. I can't speak intelligently to that. However, I have tasked our sustainability task force. First of all, they're fully supported. For the last 2 years, we've had 2 positions that were just not filled by the mayor at that time for the sustainability task force. So we've been deficient in addressing our climate change goals and needs. That changed on December 4th. I appointed almost immediately those 2 positions to the Sustainability Task Force, and they continue that work, and they were bringing forward a plan to, we've got a disconnect. The problem is new development continues to be better towards its climate change goals. We have better development standards, but our existing housing stock doesn't. So we have to find a way to make it cheaper and more affordable for development, to improve our greenhouse gas emissions and the climate sustainability of our community. The Sustainability Task Force is addressing that, and they're coming forward in the next few months with a proposal to address just exactly that.
Chico clearly, as we've been talking about today, has been impacted by the Camp Fire. And there's a question here of wondering if, as Governor Newsom has offered state financial help, obviously to Paradise and the directly affected areas, is there any sense that that would be coming to Chico as well?
State support?
Correct.
Yes.
State
that was
financial help.
My entire speech was about that, yeah. The specific asks, what we've received, absolutely. I've got a transcript if anyone would like it.
Okay. How soon can we make real progress on reducing fees to bring extra housing via secondary units, improving access on roads damaged by sewer installation, and why is the city not going for state grants?
I object to the third point.
Okay.
The city goes after all grants. It's impressive to see the grants that they go after. All possible grants, and we're heavily grant funded. But with regards to our roads and our potholes, in the last decade, we've had a need for $8 million annually just to maintain the current condition of our roads. The potholes that are there now, not fixing them, just maintaining the current condition so we don't see a reduction in our road base. We have a need for over $8 million a year, and we spend a little over $1 million on that. So let me say that again in a different way. There is $7 million that we are not spending per year on maintaining our roads in the condition that they are in now. Obviously, we are leading to the destruction of our roads, and we're looking for that $8 million. But thankfully, about 3 years ago, we gave a pay increase to just one bargaining group that put no additional staff put no additional firefighters on the job, no police officers on the street. It just was a pay increase that cost us nearly $4 million, $1.5 million. We saved $4 million that year, and we cost ourselves $1.5 million just on that pay raise alone for that one group. That's the kind of stuff that we can't do, especially when we know we've had a deficit annually of $7 million. On top of that, we're in a federal disaster zone, so we've got some work to do.
You know, as outlined in the report, one of the biggest challenges we face is bringing our roads back up to an acceptable pavement condition index. And if we looked at just our arterials and collectors at this point, according to city staff, that's a $91 million bill to bring that pavement condition index up to where it should be. It's not going to get fixed with $8 million a year. We need much more than that, and the longer we wait, those costs increase exponentially, about 22% over the next 5 years, 22% over the next 10 years, I'm sorry. So we've got to do something immediately to have a large influx of funding to fix our roads, bring them up to an acceptable level, and maintain them from there. If we don't, our pavement condition index will continue to decline, and you'll be looking at what the roads look like on 7th Street between Esplanade and Magnolia all over town. So we hope the city will continue to move forward with the discussions about some bond funding that would bring that funding availability to the city, get the roads fixed, and then we'll worry about maintenance going ahead.
Thank you. This is going to be our last question for this morning. How is the city planning for the further future? As we grow to accommodate the extra people, how will we sustain businesses and housing in the years ahead as they return and rebuild?
I think that's a tough question to answer looking out beyond 2 years, 3 years. I don't care which number you pick. We just have so many variables that we're juggling right now that I can't tell you what that 10-year outlook is. I mentioned to National Public Radio that the plan is that there is no plan. And that's to mean there is no disaster like this. I've looked throughout the country. I've tried to look at which cities have faced something like this. There are some facsimiles, but nobody has any idea of this type of devastation. We've never seen anything like this before. So the plan has to be something that we're continuing to work and develop and changing as we develop more and more information. And right now there's so many variables, I can't give you a forecast out beyond about 3 years. We have a financial planning forecast that we look 5 years out, and that's sometimes dubious, but it's a welcome exercise. I'm looking at Catherine Mathis, our finance director here, and our accounting director. So we, yeah, I guess that answers the question. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to thank our presenters for being here and educating us on what's going on in the future. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.